So when it comes down to it, I consider myself a spiritual person, but I'm also a huge advocate for self-work and self-improvement, obviously. I believe that all things happen for a reason and for a purpose, but I also believe in giving 110% effort and making the most out of the cards that you've been dealt with in life. I've found that there's a way to combine both the elements of surrendered spirituality with disciplined hard work. Some people have one without the other, and that leads to imbalance. Modern society is not set up to encourage us to pursue any kind of self-actualization, but just to do the bare minimum and then spend the rest of the day killing time, scrolling on our phones, eating high-calorie shitty food, and seeking out mindless entertainment. No purpose, no direction. It's become very difficult to break out of that in the modern day because most people don't even try, and that mentality has become very contagious, and it takes intentionality to break out of that. There's a war inside of each and every one of us to push against the default modern day entropy. Entropy, in simple terms, is the disorder and chaos that creeps in automatically when things aren't being intentionally managed. It's the metaphorical dust on the shelf that builds and builds indefinitely, if nothing is ever done about it. It's the general downward trend towards death and disorder. We've all experienced the slow degradation of an unkept house, financial situation, a withering friendship or relationship. Now, in spite of me believing that all things happen for a reason and with a purpose, there is an extreme and imbalanced type of spirituality out there that starts to lean too much on these kinds of one-line spiritual catchphrases. That there's no such thing as wasted time and everything happens for a reason, to the point that it becomes detrimental to any kind of meaningful progress or growth. Spirituality starts to become like an excuse to take no action, waiting around for some kind of golden opportunity while your metaphorical house is burning to the ground because of inaction. I've been guilty of this myself, and I would encourage you to be honest with yourself about where you stand with these kinds of beliefs, and if you're using it as a crutch to avoid the work that's meant for you. It's very easy to internally talk yourself out of doing meaningful, purposeful work, and in turn you deny the rest of the world your gifts and your unique contributions that only you can give. I know there's certainly people out there who are meant to be a monk in the mountains somewhere and just meditate their whole life, but I think a large majority of us aren't those people. We're meant to participate in this game of life. I've heard Alan Watts talk about this a few times. Whenever I have come across these people who adopt more extreme forms of spirituality, they aren't sitting around meditating and seeking. They're usually neck high in vices and distractions while waiting on a higher power to magically bring something purposeful into their life, for it to fall into their lap while they're scrolling all day on TikTok. It generally doesn't work that way. For me personally, taking action has been mostly an act of faith, because the idea of not getting the results that you want, especially once you start genuinely and earnestly putting in the effort, can be kind of scary. And on the same token, there's something deeply spiritual about doing the purposeful work even when you feel resistance to it and it's the last thing in the world you want to do right now, which for me personally is a majority of the time. That's why it took me so fucking long to start this YouTube channel, if I'm being honest. I have felt the call for this kind of work for a long time, but I kept putting it off time and time again because I was listening to my inner critic. The behind the scenes work, the tedious, unsexy tasks that nobody else sees when it's just you with yourself, these are called private victories. That's a concept I first heard in Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And once you get to a place where you start to push resistance and you start taking action, then there's a degree of healthy surrender of the outcome that needs to happen for balance. That's usually where the spiritual sayings like, let go and let God, everything happens for a reason, starts to have actual meaning. There could be someone who's giving 100% effort, going hard, genuinely putting their whole heart into something, aligned with their purposeful work, but in a constant state of stress because they can't accept that there might be an outcome that's out of their control. And since they can't control every aspect of the results, they have no peace of mind. This person could absolutely use some spirituality and some healthy surrender to help improve their life. Usually if someone is this stressed after doing everything they can, giving all their effort, then that means that there's little to no faith that things will unfold the way that they're meant to. So it's essentially the idea of doing everything you can do giving your all, and then letting that shit go. It would be like me creating a YouTube video, putting everything into it, making it as good as I can, putting it out into the world, and then spending every day after that freaking the fuck out because it's not getting the engagement that I hoped for. It's useless. You just need to let it go, move on to the next project. It's best to do the work that you feel called to, give 100% effort, release it into the world, and then surrender the outcome. Now, you might not even know what your gifts or unique contributions are yet, and that's okay. Don't beat yourself up for that. That's normal at first. To have that feeling and that growing awareness of, man, there has to be more to my life than this. I would recommend that you just start to follow your curiosity in life day to day. What are you genuinely interested in that you've never given yourself full permission to explore? And why haven't you allowed yourself to go down those paths? Is it fear of judgment from your family or your peers? Has the voice of your inner critic talked you out of it? Any kind of purposeful work will always start with following your genuine curiosity and interests, and then eventually using those interests to slowly transition into being more of a creator and less of a consumer. Being a mindless consumer is part of the modern day entropy of the individual that we talked about earlier. It's the default of basically everyone. Going beyond that and integrating your unique gifts can give you a huge sense of purpose. These videos that I'm making, for example, are just a culmination of all my interests throughout the years. It started with curiosity for self-improvement and fitness and philosophy and spirituality, essentially trying to solve my own problems and get out of the pain that I was feeling at the time. I always loved music, even as a little kid, and I slowly learned how to sing, how to compose, how to play instruments. So all the music that you hear in the background of these videos are songs that I made myself. I didn't have an end goal when I started learning any of these interests. I was just curious about them. It's like the same excitement that you would feel whenever you would first get into a video game. You'd be learning all the different dynamics, all the different attributes, all the different strategies. A couple of years ago, I became very curious about cinematography. So I went down the rabbit trail of YouTube cinematography tutorials. I had to be okay with sucking at all of these things for a long period of time before I could actually put them to use. And even in the midst of all the excitement and curiosity I felt while I was learning those things, my inner critic was still telling me that I was wasting my time. And I had to fight through that, and you probably will too. I was faced with a choice every single time one of these interests of mine popped up. Either let myself go down the rabbit trail, or to stay in comfort and familiarity and ignore that pull, and just keep consuming and consuming to pass the time. I think everybody's meant to be a creator to some degree. Most people just don't ever see creation as a possibility for them because of fear and limiting beliefs. But I would encourage you to start taking steps of faith to reframe that narrative. You might have a genuine curiosity for art, fitness, cooking. It could really be anything. As time goes on, dabbling eventually turns into mastery. You have to start at level 1. Most of my own personal spiritual self-growth came from just taking action, because it takes faith. It takes faith to take action, to step into the fog that you can't see through, not knowing if it'll lead to anything, if there will be any kind of desirable results. Oftentimes, the magic you're looking for is in the work that you're avoiding. Ironically, the most profound and spiritual and synchronistic moments of my life have been when I'm not avoiding the work and using spirituality as an excuse to not take action. When you finally respond to that inner call and put your whole heart into something, that's when the surrender to the outcome and the spirituality starts to make sense. I would recommend The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. That book really helped me integrate a lot of these things. It helped me learn how to do higher quality work while remaining in a peaceful state of surrender. When you get to that place, you can have peace knowing that you're doing the work that you're meant to do each and every day, and have faith that what is meant for you will happen. Whether the impact is millions of people being positively affected, or just you yourself learning and growing and becoming better, and a few steps closer to self-actualizing your higher potential in this physical lifetime. So I've been taking some one-on-one calls recently throughout the week. If that's something that interests you, I have a link in the description. My life is pretty stacked at the moment, so I'm only able to do a handful of calls a week. It's currently all I have time for. It's been amazing to talk to some of you guys about your current situations. Every call has been completely different. Some of it's been about fitness, dating, healing past trauma, but it's been awesome. I also made an Instagram. I'll be more active on there as it grows, sharing day-to-day life if that's something that interests you. So follow me on there if you'd like. I appreciate you watching. Subscribe if you got something out of this. Watch this video right now, and I'll talk to you soon.